I didn't say a word when the HOA president slammed her fist on the table and told me I was illegally occupying community property. I just slid the federal land use order across the polished wood, the one stamped with the Department of Defense insignia, and watched their lawyer's face collapse. He tried to keep his composure, flipping the pages, like maybe he'd find a loophole buried in the fine print. But I knew the moment his knuckles went pale that the fight was over. My land wasn't just mine. It was protected under federal veteran reclamation statutes. The HOA had overstepped so badly that the government itself now had cause to dismantle everything they thought they controlled. That moment didn't happen overnight, to really understand how I got there. Sitting in a fluorescent-lit boardroom while a pack of self-important neighbors realized they'd de-gambled with the wrong person as property. You have to know where this started, and it started with something simple. My attempt to come home. When I first moved back, I wasn't chasing drama or politics. I had just returned from years out of state, years of service and then transition, trying to build some peace for myself. My grandfather left me a few acres of land in a quiet county. Rolling hills, oak trees, casting wide shade, a creek that carried the smell of wet stone after summer storms. It wasn't a mansion or an estate. It was just a modest plot, but it was mine. I could fix up the cabin, plant a small garden, maybe fish down by the creek. I wasn't looking for neighbors, rules, or power struggles. I just wanted air that didn't taste like concrete and the sound of crickets at night instead of sirens. The land had sat empty for a while after Grandpa passed, and when I first walked it again, it felt like stepping into memory. I could still picture him sharpening tools in the shed, the smell of motor oil mixing with fresh-cut cedar. I thought I was stepping into a simple project. Restore the cabin, put down roots, maybe even build something steady for once. What I didn't realize was that in the time I'd been gone, progress had crept right up to my property lines. A developer had built a subdivision on the far side of the valley, rows of cookie-cutter houses with stone facades, meant to look more expensive than they were. Along with it came the inevitable HOA. The kind of board that thinks it is running a small government instead of just a glorified lawn care committee. At first, I barely noticed. My land wasn't in their footprint. It was older, deeded differently, outside their platted boundaries. Or so I thought. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a letter, a thick, cream-colored envelope taped to my gate, embossed with the HOS logo, as if that gave it weight. Inside was a notice of violation for improper fencing material, an unauthorized vehicle storage. I laughed, honestly, because the fence in question was barbed wire my grandfather had strung up in the 70s, and the unauthorized vehicle was my old Ford pickup parked in the grass. It wasn't even on their map, but the letter ended with a line that turned my laugh into a frown. Failure to comply may result in daily fines and lien actions against the property. I thought it was a mistake. A clerical error, maybe. So I did the reasonable thing. I emailed their office. I explained politely that my property wasn't part of the subdivision, that the original deed predated their HOA by decades, that they had no jurisdiction. I even attached a scanned copy of my grandfather's recorded plat, just in case. I got no reply. A week later, another letter showed up. This time they demanded I cease unauthorized improvements, apparently referring to the fact that I was replacing rotted cabin siding with new boards. They claimed exterior modifications required architectural committee approval. That's when irritation began to creep in. My land was mine. Nobody had authority to tell me what kind of nails I could use. Primera triade again. This time I called the HOA office directly. The woman who answered spoke in the clipped tone of someone who enjoys petty authority. She insisted that all properties within Valley Crest boundaries were subject to oversight. I corrected her. My parcel wasn't within Valley Crest. She cut me off and said, "Sir, the maps have been updated. You'll need to submit compliance forms or face penalties." Then she hung up. That's the moment my attitude shifted. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I felt the weight of something sliding into place, the way a soldier feels when a drill suddenly turns real. I realized this wasn't teen competency, it was strategy. They were expanding their reach, probably because someone stood to profit if my land got folded into their control. The escalation came fast after that. Certified letters, threats of liens, Notices pinned to my cabin door with bright orange tape like I was some kind of delinquent squatter. Then, while I was away for a few weeks handling work out of state, the unthinkable happened. I came back to find a real estate sign staked right in my driveway. My land, my family's cabin, my creek, my woods, had been listed for sale. According to county filings, the HOA had auctioned a parcel as abandoned property and sold it to one of their board members' relatives. That was the moment shock gave way to cold focus. I didn't yell. I didn't storm their office. I went quiet. The way you do when you've been pushed past, outrage into calculation. They thought I was some lone landowner with no recourse, someone they could bully into submission or trick out of inheritance. What they didn't know was that the very soil under my boots carried protections they couldn't touch. You see, years earlier, when I first left for service, I had registered my grandfather's land under a federal program designed to preserve parcels tied to veteran homesteads and training easements. The creek that ran through my acreage had once been used as a National Guard training ground in the 1950s. And because I was his direct descendant and a veteran myself, the property fell under a reclamation clause. It wasn't just privately owned. It was federally shielded. No HOA, no county board, no developer could override that designation. But to prove it, I needed records. So I went to work. Late nights poring over microfiche in the county archive, pulling survey maps from the 70s, cross-referencing legal descriptions with military easement files. I called the Department of Veterans Affairs, then the DOD's Land Management Office. Slowly, document by document, I built a file thick enough to crush their entire scheme. Every letter they had sent me, every taped violation notice, I cataloged. I photographed their real estate sign on my land, the lock they cut off my gate, the date stamps on county filings. Meanwhile, neighbors grew quiet. Some avoided me, maybe afraid of the HOA. A few whispered warnings that the president was ruthless, that anyone who pushed back got buried in fines until they folded. My family worried, too. My sister asked if it was worth it, if I should just sell and move. But every time I stood in front of that cabin, hearing the creak roll behind it, I thought of my grandfather's calloused hands building it board by board. No, it was worth it. When I finally requested a hearing, the HOA assumed it was just another homeowner coming to plead. They scheduled it in their clubhouse, with all the smug trappings of authority. A long table, a row of board members, their attorney sitting off to the side like muscle. They opened with accusations that I had trespassed, that I was defying lawful orders, that my unauthorized occupancy would be escalated to county court. That's when I reached into my folder. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply laid down the Department of Defense reclamation order, the VAS land use certification, and the county survey showing my parcel carved out decades before Valley Crest was even imagined. The room went still. The lawyer read, then reread, then whispered to the president, her face drained of color. Because it wasn't just that they vendro ran. It was that they had committed fraud by selling protected federal property. That essay level of liability you don't walk away from with a slap on the wrist. The aftermath was swift. Within a month, the board president resigned. 2 other members quietly stepped down. The sale of my land was voided and flagged as fraudulent in county records. The HOA itself was hit with an investigation, and from what I later heard, their insurance company refused to cover the mess. My land was not only secure, it was untouchable. Now, when I drive through the edge of that subdivision, some neighbors wave half-heartedly. Others turn their heads, pretending not to see me. The clubhouse sits quieter these days, blinds drawn more often than not. As for me, I've got my cabin fixed, a garden coming in by the side yard, and the kind of silence I fought for. They tried to erase me, but all they managed to do was prove that some things, land, legacy, and law, are stronger than their little rules. Now, they don't send letters. They don't tape notices to my door. They don't even make eye contact at the grocery store. And that's fine by me, because peace isn't given by an HOA vote. It's claimed, defended, and, in my case, federally protected.